that I have so many loves of different just franchises of different, like obviously people come in here and they see the Star Wars stuff, right? But like I just have so many different loves and knowledge of different things, right? That people I can totally relate with what you're saying, because I get in these conversations with people and I see them eventually they're just kind of staring. And I'm like, okay, I need to back off because you're not getting what I'm talking about. Like I'm talking about some cartoon stuff, but that's why, like, when I hear people talk about stuff, and that's kind of what we do here at the channel, we call it a place for nerds, even though my intro totally messed up because I was getting feedback. We call it usually a place for nerds, we're a place where we can all just get together and talk about stuff. And so I love when people start talking about their fandoms, even if I don't know what they're talking about.
Right.
Because it gets me excited that they're excited about something. So like, I always try not to have that deer in headlights look when somebody's telling me about something that I've never heard of. Like, I'll be honest with you. You're talking about like not being into popular stuff. I was talking about last night, we do a call-in show, and like it ended up being a 6-hour show last night that like people just, talking and coming on here and talking with me and everything. And people like that because I've got a knowledge of a lot of different stuff. And so, but somebody brought up Doctor Who, and I've never watched Doctor Who. I've never gotten to Doctor Who just because I've always felt overwhelmed by Doctor Who. I have friends who are into Doctor Who, but it's like, I know that that goes deep and that goes back decades now. And it's like, I don't know which Doctor Who to watch, and everybody tells me something different. Like there's people who tell me, oh, well, you got this series and this doctor and that doctor. And I'm like, okay, so I'm still trying to figure that out. But I love when people talk about Doctor Who because they have a love for Doctor Who and the imagery and the things associated with Doctor Who. I would never sit there and go, just because it's not something that I'm super passionate about. I would never try to dissuade somebody else who is really into that or not. And I find that people do that a lot. And maybe we can kind of like talk about a little bit about like pop culture stuff, because there's a lot going on right now in pop culture with, it seems like fandoms kind of at each other,
I mean, we've been talking about toys for an hour. People are like, why are you toys?
No, it's cool, man. And hey, like I said, man, if you ever want to talk toys like that, I'm down. We can talk about that off air. But yeah, for sure. There's just these, it seems like, there's these fandoms that if I like this, I can't like what you like, or you shouldn't like what you like.
I don't understand that at all. Like I grew up, everyone knows I'm a fanatical Star Trek fan, but when I was a kid, Star Wars didn't exist yet. Mm-hmm. So I was a fanatical Star Trek fan even as a little kid, but when Star Wars came out, I'm like, this is the greatest thing I've ever seen. Now, it didn't mean I liked Star Trek any less. Star Wars was different, but I still was all in. And then after that, there was this funny, like, people used to say, well, do you like Star Trek or Star Wars better? And I'm like, well, aside from taking place in space somewhere, they're totally different. They're not the same thing at all. So to me, picking one over another, it was weird. I'm like, why? I love them both, and I love the ship designs and I love the characters and I like the toys, and Star Trek and Star Wars to me, it'd be like, if you like cop shows or lawyer shows, if you like procedurals, it's not like, well, I'm not going to watch Chicago Fire because I watch CSI Miami instead. I mean, like, why not just watch them both? And and I've never understood, like, it's such a bizarre thing to me. And one of the things that I grew up with, and I've told this story a million times, but I'll tell it again. So in the wake of Star Wars, there was a lot of books about science fiction movies, genre movies that didn't exist before. And there was a book, and it came out in 1978. The book is called Sci-Fi Now, and it's by this guy named Alan Frank. And it was a pictorial history of the science fiction film, all the way back to the teens, like a Trip to the Moon, George Méliès's Trip to the Moon. And when I was reading this book, I'm like, I'm going to see every single one of these movies. Every single movie that's in that book, I'm going to see it. And it didn't matter whether it was black and white, because to me, if you wanted to know about science fiction movies, I had to see all of them. the only way you can be an expert is to see them all.
Yeah.
And nowadays, like when I hear young people say, like, I don't watch black and white movies, I'm like, I don't relate to that at all, because when I was growing up, like, I loved The Twilight Zone and I loved Outer Limits. The Twilight Zone was only in black and white, so it never occurred to me not to watch Twilight Zone.
Sure.
And, you know, back then as a kid of the 70s, you would watch, I mean, think about it. When I think about pop culture, we're 40 years away. This year is the 40th anniversary of the release of The Empire Strikes Back. Well, when I was a kid, Twilight Zone had only been off the air for 10 years.
Oh, wow.
So it's like, it went off the air in 1964. And I'm like, why wouldn't I watch Twilight Zone? It was still new, even though it was black and white, you know, and it was such a strange thing to me, because in the year, I mean, I've been a fan since I was 5 years old, according to my mom. You know, I've been watching Star Trek since I was 5. And I was a fanatic about all of this stuff even back then. So when I was growing up, the majority of science fiction, fantasy, and horror films, if you went back in history, were black and white. So nowadays there's exponentially more material. So if you become a genre fan now, I think modern audiences, and especially younger fans, they're not going back and watching the whole history of their, you know, I've often said on my show that pop culture is about 20 years old. People will go back about 20 years and then they lose interest. And for me, it's really interesting. I mean, I remember once my girlfriend's daughter, Sophie, was watching a movie, and she commented about how it was old, and she could tell, she didn't know why, but what she was seeing was the actual quality of the color and the film grain in the image. She knew the movie was like made in the 70s. Yeah. Because of the actual color. And kids today, they're just not that interested in going back any further. And I get it, because if you're somebody that grew up in a world where Jurassic Park already existed, so you've seen photorealistic dinosaurs, it's going to be very hard for you to go back and watch a Ray Harryhausen dinosaur movie like Valley of the Guanji that has stop motion dinosaurs. It's going to be very difficult for you to watch that, because why would you? If you've already got photorealistic dinosaurs in Jurassic Park movies or whatever, why would you go back and you watch Valley of the Guanji unless you wanted to? And for me, I grew up in a world that I didn't have Jurassic Park. So I would go back and watch any movie with stop motion animation, whether it's Jason and the Argonauts or The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms. Now it's a whole different world, because everything is so sleek and modern. So it's really hard, I think, for people to go backwards, especially because we live in this amazing era. Like if I grew up with movies like The Matrix and Jurassic Park and, you know, what we have now, I would find myself hard pressed to go back and watch. Well, I mean, Tron is a classic, but when you've already seen The Matrix, do you go back and watch Tron? Do you get anything out of Tron? I mean, I love Tron, because nothing looks the way Tron looks. So what's great about the original Tron is it's a movie that no other movie looks like Tron. So once you get into the computer world, it's like really wild to look at still.
Oh man.